This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Right, so the Browns season hasn't gone how any of us expected it to. Even if you didn't have high expectations, I think you're still disappointed in where this team is. I guess it starts with the quarterback. Like, we're going to talk about the quarterback position. It has not been what you've wanted it to be. I guess at this point, I think we've talked enough about the fact that he's not living up to expectations, that we haven't seen it. And I guess where can we go from here, knowing that he's still going to have to play there? Like, how do you support this level of play? Obviously, the defense playing more consistent ball helps, but also offensively, just like, is Nick Chubb coming back going to be enough for this offense? Because it feels like if the defense does not hold a team under 14, then this team doesn't really have a real shot to win.
I think I saw somebody post that Nick Sirianni is under fire in Philly. This is going to sound random, but he's under fire in Philly, and he had his son come to the press conference with him as a way to almost shield the hard questions. It's like I saw somebody retweet it and say, this is what the Browns are doing with Nick Chubb right now, just letting him divert all the negativity with his return. I don't think Nick Chubb solves anything. I mean, is he better than what they're putting in the backfield right now? There's no doubt. We have to see what he looks like with a recovered knee and all of that, but Nick's not solving everything. That's the tough part. So when you're going into, like, the root of your question is, how do we stomach this, or how do we sort of salvage it? I don't think there is a way to salvage this. I think that the problem with the offense is they are trying to live in a world that I don't believe the players believe in, and I don't think they believe in the guy operating the system as well. And it's trickled down in performance of players' effort. I think it's obvious that players' effort is lacking. I think there's just, like, you can tell. I got into, like, a little bit of a wormhole last night, going back and watching some of the 2020 Texans, just because I wanted to see again, like, and I've studied it before, but what does Watson look like when he was on all cylinders? And the way at which the people around him are playing in 2020, the effort, the intensity, the nonstop drive, I'm like, my God, this looks completely different. And obviously some of what they were doing was working, and that helps. But I'm just like, okay, this looks different schematically, obviously, because the Browns are driven by Ken Dorsey largely, is what I've noticed, is that they're operating in a world that is pretty much pass game coordinated by Ken Dorsey. Like, I think Kevin is trying to do a little more of what he's done traditionally as a run game developer over the years, and kind of apply what him and Bill Callahan have worked through. He's gotten back to that a little bit. But some of their run game is based off RPO stuff, which is Ken's baby. And then obviously, tying in some of their downfield passing game. It's stuff that if you go back and watch the Bills last year in the first 10 games, you'll be like, that looks pretty familiar. The route concepts, the spacing, the alignments, how they're having the quarterback read it out. It's Ken's stuff. And I think Kevin's calling it. And I think there's probably, Quincy, a larger discussion to be had around, should Kevin be calling what Ken has put in? I don't think it's like Kevin on radio silence. I definitely think there's the situation where Kevin's saying to Ken, what do you like here? Like, that is it. I mean, they're definitely talking through this stuff. It's a group effort, and really one guy's just putting the voice in the ear of the quarterback. So pinning it all on Kevin, I think, is really unfair. But at the root of this is the hiring of Ken Dorsey. It's the application of what Ken Dorsey likes to use, and it's a problem, right? So, the quarterback stuff is sort of what it is. I hate that phrase, but they're not going to change by application of wanting to see through the investment that they made. And there might be a belief internally that this is the only guy that can win us football games, because the offensive line, although when they're doing their job, the quarterback is not meeting the standard, they're not doing their job consistently enough to just simply pin it on one player. I think that's the thing that is kind of frustrating. And you would agree with me, when you look at this, you watch it, you want to put it on one player, you want to believe that this could be solved by putting somebody else in at one spot and fix it, right? The case is not there for that. The wide receivers have been inconsistent. The running game has been inconsistent. The running backs have been inconsistent, especially in pass pro, and the offensive line has not been good enough. On top of that, you have the ramifications of a quarterback who's broken. I think that we can get into that bigger discussion in what way is Deshaun Watson broken. But when you have all of those things together and you have a quarterback who is not, I would say, clicking mentally on all cylinders, and is sort of, and I can't even say sort of, definitely physically different than he used to be in his prime, then you have a mixture of the worst ingredients in football and why you are lingering at the bottom of pretty much every major offensive category and a quarterback who is putting up historically bad EPA and success rate numbers.
Yeah, and the thing where I get to with Watson is I kind of want him bench just so I can really diagnose everything else, right? Like, I know the offensive line is bad, but I also know that Deshaun, bad offensive lines and high sack rates have followed him wherever he's played, right? That's part of his game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much of this is just him. I mean, like, part of it is like, yeah, he holds the ball long. And I think that's what people kind of credit all the sacks for. But I mean, he's just never been a great maneuver of the pocket, right? He's never had great instincts when it comes to staying in the pocket. Um, and like part of me wants to see, well, not even part of me, I just want to see somebody else in there. Maybe because I'm just tired of watching Deshaun at this point, just admittedly.
Which is fair.
And
Fair.
also, it's just, I think I'm not, sometimes he's so bad that I don't feel like I can evaluate things fairly. Like, I don't think I can evaluate Ken Dorsey's contribution to this offense fairly. I don't think I can evaluate where Kevin is trying to play call these Ken Dorsey plays fairly. Because sometimes I look at him like, well, there's answers, right? Like, and he's not taking them, or his eyes aren't where the answers are, but I don't know why that's the case, right? Is it just something he's seeing? Is it something they're telling him to see? At least if I see these problems get replicated again with another quarterback, I'm like, okay, then that's more than likely something about how this is being ran than just the quarterback itself. And at this point, what Watson's playing, I think the EPA numbers were the lowest in the league right now.
Yeah, they're
And
there.
like every other number you can look at that's an advanced metric or even just some basic metrics here are putting him at the bottom of the league here. So that's where I'm at with the quarterback situation, where it's like, I don't feel like we're going to learn much about this team if he stays out there. Where do you feel like with that? Like, what do you feel like you can learn about this team, especially this offense right now, if Watson stays out there for an extended period of time as a starting quarterback?
That's a good question and a little tricky to answer because I don't think you will learn much else from what Watson has done and where he's put them and his means of operation within what they're doing. I think to the first part of your statement and kind of tracking where he is mentally, like I see a quarterback who missed so much time, Quincy, that he is essentially starting over. He missed
Mm,
all of 21, all of 22, except for 6 games at the end of a season, where he was stepping in and kind of just figuring it out on the fly. He only played 5 games the next year. He's missed so much football. He feels like a rookie mentally again. And not that he hasn't gone through experiences and maybe the nerves factor, but the speed of the game, the way defenses are playing now, which are different over the years than what he was doing his best work against. And his ability to feel comfortable and trust that he can make those plays again, or as a rookie's case, trust that you can take your college level skill and put it into the NFL and apply it. So I see a guy who is mentally lacking. Like let me be careful with this. I never thought Deshaun Watson was a progression quarterback. He never really did that. He was really a front side, read it out and make a play happen guy. Like he was, I'm going to see where my eyes are supposed to go right off the snap. I'm going to read where they want me to read. And then if it doesn't work out, I'm not really going to find the backside. I'm not going to really hold in. I'm not going to really reset in the pocket, move around, reset, throw downfield. Like that's not been his MO. His MO has been, hey, first, second read to a side, half field read. If it's not there, I'm going to do some Deshaun Watson stuff. I'm going to get out, scramble, create chaos, and get out of
mm,
that chaos and do some highlight worthy plays. Now, as you get older, your body gets beat down, your shoulder gets beat up. Some of those heroics start to fade. And guess what? Teams start to really know what you're trying to do. They know what you do. If your eyes come off the front side, he's not finding the backside. He's going to run. He's going to step up, try to run through the pocket or run lateral. And they know that. Teams are banking on that, right? They're processing it. So what's going on is there are times where the offensive line is just flat out bad in front of him. You're shuffling in a right guard, a center, a left tackle, a right tackle. They're doing everything. And there's times where they're bad. And he is not to blame for their poor quality of play, picking up twist stunts, all that stuff. He can't be
yeah.
blamed for that. And there are times when the running backs, who I think, I can't say I watch all 31 other teams in the NFL, but the pass protection from the running backs has been so bad. It is downright I think you can't even make an excuse for keeping him in. You can't like get him out in the backfield and let him be a route. Like, because you can't keep Pierre Strong, you can't keep Jerome Ford in. They're getting bulldozed. And from that situation where you keep putting them in, those guys are failing in front of him, not allowing him to do what he should be doing. So he lacks trust in them. And then when they do it all right, Quincy, I posted a video on the Browns Film Breakdown channel today from last night's pass game study. Like, when they do it all right, he is so skittish and so mentally sped up his process that he can't do his job. Slide right, step up, find the backside dig. He can't do that right now. He is so mentally broken that I don't think he can do it. And I don't think he will. And I think kind of if you track this back to the conversation, I think it was Charles Robinson talked about this like a week ago, where he's like, well, back in the Houston days, there was a sort of a front office executive who said he went to practice and watched, and Watson was heavily leaning on Bill O'Brien to make checks and stuff like that at the line or whatever they were doing. And it was like, oh, he's not really mentally there as a quarterback. And the Browns, people use that as a way to like, hey, the Browns are dumb. Why would they ever think that he could do this if he wasn't doing it then? And I kind of made an argument on my pod, which is, if a guy is lighting the league up, which is what he was doing in 19 and 20, and he wasn't even really there as a mental processing quarterback yet, that's exciting to me. That's like, oh my God, at a baseline, this guy's going to do this. And then we can work with him to get him mentally there over the next 5 years so that when he's in his 30s, he's mentally through the game. He doesn't even have to lean on that anymore. That's more of like an exciting, like, he's here. Think about if he gets there and we can help him get there. And then he misses so much ball over the 21, 22, 23 seasons. The Browns can't really work with him the way they want to. And then you get him back into the fold and things aren't perfect in front of him. And he is mentally unable to progress the way you need a veteran quarterback to progress, whose skills, speed, arm strength, and pocket feel are deteriorating, right? They're deteriorating, and he is not helping that case. And obviously some people around him are not helping that case, but at the forefront is he's not doing his job. And that's where I'm of the belief that, like, take a week or two, brother. Like, let him watch for a while. It's not going to, like, you take Deshaun out and start Jameis for a week, or you start whoever. It's not like that doesn't put a death sentence on his ability to still be a part of your team the rest of the year or into next year. And I think that a reset for him, with how fast it feels like everything is moving around him, might do some good. And it might also galvanize the team in a way that you are not expecting, because they have a quarterback who thinks about the game in a different way and is throwing the football to different locations than the guys are accustomed to. It could all work. I just think, and again, to your point, the status quo of just thinking Watson is going to solve this on the fly. And I have been one on record saying he needs to play. He needs to play to figure out if he can do this or not. But what you're seeing is so historically bad. Like, you can talk yourself into playing him if it's like, yeah, he's like the 20th, 21st quarterback in EPA and passing grade and all that. And he'll work through it. Let's see it through. No, he's putting up Jamarcus Russell level EPA success rates through 6 weeks. This is so bad. What you are doing is actively telling your fan base, we're going to let him push through historically poor quarterback play. We're not even going to consider taking him out, and we're going to go 1-5, largely because of him. He's not the whole pie chart here on blame, but he's a big part of it. So we're just going to ride it out with him. Big time struggles from the highest paid player on the roster. We're going to ride it out with him, and we're going to tell you that we don't really think winning football games and doing everything necessary to do so is something we will uproot this quarterback situation for. That's hard for fans to stomach. It is. Because if anybody else, Quincy, was playing historically bad football at any position on this roster, some people could probably try to argue Amari is, but he's not. I mean, I know the drops are magnified, but he's not. If he was playing historically awful, they would be replaced. They would, for the sake of the team. And when that's not happening to your highest paid player, the trickle-down effect of lack of belief, lack of desire to do your job right all the time, caring about the details, becomes a little less important for you. That's what I'm getting at. And I think that they've lost it because of that.
Well, just go back to your idea about like benching him for a little while. Do you think the fact that like the narrative has been with him, that every time he hasn't been out there and the Browns have had an extended stay backup in, like a Jacoby Brissett or Joe Flacco, the narrative has been that those guys have produced better or looked more comfortable than he has in this offense. Do you think that that's going to be something that prevents him from being able to do something like that, or accept doing something like that? Because in the back of his mind, he's afraid that, like, oh, what if another Joe Flacco situation happens? Yeah. They already don't like me. If I have to come in and take over for a guy they think is playing better for me later in the year, that's going to make it worse. Like, How do you think he's managing that, and like how you manage his pride and ego with that? Because I agree with you. If you could just bench him for a little while, and it didn't mean that you have to end this whole Watson era permanently the second you bench him, I think
Yeah.
they probably would have thought about doing that. But I think in their mind and in Watson's mind, it's like if you bench him, you probably can't come back to him. Like I just the way that this is going to work, especially if you have success outside of him, right? I think that's the thing. If you don't have success, then you can do whatever you want with him. People are just going to be furious. But that's
That's a good
how
question.
do you manage that point?
Well, I think the thing that I said on my show yesterday for this morning's pod here on Tuesday is that they are treating him in the poor play like a veteran gets treated who's giving you 15 of his best years, right? Think of like Matt Ryan in
Matt
Atlanta.
Ryan
Think
and
of like
Indy, yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger's end, right? He was pretty bad, and it was
Philip
obvious.
Rivers.
100%. Like these guys who are clear, okay, they've lost it. He's 36, 37. He's not going to have the Tom Brady miracle run to 45. But this is our guy. We respect him, and we are not just going to pull him for the sake of pulling him, even though it does not take a genius sitting in the stands or watching film to break down that he is the problem, right? Can't move the way he used to, can't throw the way he used to, a little slower reading things out. This is how they're treating him. Quincy, what has he done to garner that respect from this organization? He's played 6 games one season, 5 games the next season, has been a consistent part of the media problem with this team. He's done nothing to help them. So your question is justified. Is it we should consider, what does Watson think? I'm at the point where I don't give a shit. What does it matter? Like if he can't see it, if he can't see that he's struggling, then this is a part of the bigger delusional problem with this young man, is like he can't see it. So they made a decision this offseason to not bring Joe Flacco back because we didn't want to upset Deshaun Watson to the point that he wouldn't feel comfortable here. I think we can agree now, 6 weeks into the season, that Joe Flacco would have given the Browns a better chance to win week in and week out. It's not even arguable. Watch him in Indy. He's not even playing in a Joe Flacco level, like a conducive system. Shane Steichen's an RPO guru. That's what he likes to do. And Joe is not really that guy by any stretch, right? So like he's thriving there. And that element is something that's at the baseline. Now, into the season, he has now taken what we thought, we had some optimism that, okay, based on some things in 23's film, maybe there's a level here he unlocks. He gets comfortable again. It ain't happening. It's not happening. And you're going to tell me that giving him this, I think a way of saying it is like franchise legacy respect type of deal here, where this guy is obviously a massive part of the problem and we're unwilling to do it because we just don't want to be do wrong by him. If they're thinking that way, Quincy, we got problems. Like the Browns have big organizational problems if they are worried about those things. It's not even like if they take Deshaun Watson out, do you guarantee he's going to get the job back? No, because listen, Jameis could come in and light it up and go on a Geno Smith run here and figure it out. Like there is that level of possibility. If we're saying, and you said it was a narrative, it's a fact that Jacoby Brissett and Joe Flacco were better than Deshaun in this offense. There's no denying it. And it's not to say that like they're going to ask if Jameis comes in, the game plan is less RPO dependent. It's less of that, more traditional Kevin stuff. What I'm getting at is you cannot think that way of like, oh, what impact will it have on Deshaun? My friend, like if he gets cut from Cleveland this offseason, who's picking that guy up? I don't care that he's a nothing burger. You could pick Russell Wilson up because like, Denver's a dumpster fire and but he's still a good dude. He's still fine. Like who's picking the nightmare of Deshaun Watson up? So it's like, hey, you're either stepping back and taking a few games off here. Maybe you get the chance again, or we're done. Like that, like he doesn't get to call the shots. You know what I mean? And like it's not there anymore.
That's why I was wondering when you said that. I was like, are you saying that from the perspective of like, this is what you do or could do, or like, do you just force him into that situation? Because I've been of the opinion that like, ever since that third game against the Giants, you just got to treat him like a regular quarterback. Like he's not franchise anymore. So,
and if Jameis plays poorly, then he'll get another chance. If DTR plays poorly, he'll get another chance. This isn't the move to like give him a few games to sit it out and view it is a chance to evaluate if a spark to the franchise could work. If it doesn't, you go back. And then if he comes back in and plays really well the last 10 games or something, hey, that's great. That's a good outcome for everybody. So like, I just am to the point where benching, say, I'm trying to think of somebody around the league who's been really good, but has had a rough start to the season and nothing comes to mind quick enough. But like,
Maybe Matt Stafford.
yeah, sure. Right. Stafford, something like that, or something of the like, that has a big impact on that situation because he's been traditionally good for recent years and is kind of like sluggish to start the year. But what we're talking about here is he's playing so poorly that
Mhm.
you can't operate in that world of him getting to call the shots. If Deshaun is baked out, cooked, and done mentally because you put him out a couple weeks to try to let him slow the mental side down and reevaluate things, then guys, he's not the person you need him to be. He's not. Like that's the biggest part of all of this that we're missing, I think.
What do you think it's going to take for him to get benched? Because I thought watch the game was enough. Like I
I don't have an
that's
answer.
that I
I
don't know.
don't.
I don't. I watched that tape for the watching. I'm like, I don't know how he stays the starter after
No, I
that.
don't.
Like, I don't know how you show that in a position room to your wide receivers and like tell them to run through shit. Like,
Yep.
it's that's the question that I have. Like, does he have to start throwing a bunch of interceptions in order to get benched? Like, where is the line here with this team? And like, how much do you think personal pride has to do with why they're still trying to roll this thing out here? Because to me, I get the sense that I don't know where you're at on this. A lot of people are kind of giving Jimmy and AB cover because Jimmy Haslam has a horrible reputation when it comes to these things, and deservedly so, right? Jimmy has always been a meddler. He's always been somebody who pounds the table here. But it goes back to that kind of revisionist history about where Deshaun was when we traded for him, right? A lot of people are acting like we knew that Deshaun was this bad when you traded for him. It's like you got a lemon. You thought you were getting a pristine Ferrari, and you ended up with something that don't even start,
And
right?
it's not even just the Browns.
Yeah. And it was
Everybody was
13 other teams, right? And then that got dwindled down to 3 teams and then 4 teams. And then the Browns got back in there and everything else. So I don't buy this idea that like Kevin and AB were held hostage to bring Deshaun Watson in. Like,
Nope.
I can see how that decision got made. It was a logical, like at the time you thought, hey, it's an upgrade at quarterback. It's available. A guy like this at this age, this accomplished, not available often. Like you said earlier, still has room for growth, has not peaked out yet, according to what you would hear, because like he put up 4,800 passing yards. And apparently he still has room to grow as a quarterback, right? Like he's not mastered the position yet. And then it ends up going the way it ends up here. And like, for me, I'm willing to give some level of grace for like, okay, nobody expected him to be this bad when you traded for him realistically. So like the trade going bad, I'm not going to be super judgmental about that being the case because I'd rather the team take a swing at quarterback than like play it safe like they did since '99. And we're starting like Cody Kessler and hoping like a late first round pick can save the franchise, something like that. That's just where I'm at personally with it. But it's how you handle it once it becomes obviously a failure that I think is going to be what you should be judged by. And I'm just at a loss for like, hey, what's it going to take? Because like I didn't expect this week for Kevin to kind of like quasi double down and say this guy gives us the best chance to win, and that shook me. Yeah, that shook me because like that's gonna come up, in that locker room whenever the wide receivers are fed up. Well, this guy gives us the best chance to win, right? Like that's gonna become something that they think about. That the staff said, and I'm like, how much longer can they continue to do this before the coaching staff starts to lose credibility with some of the key players that you have under contract that are young that you expect to be here for the next window with the next guy, assuming that you're moving on from Deshaun Watson after this year, or at least, at least like doing a weird thing where you like have him on the roster, but he's not on the team kind of thing, right? Because you want to spread out his money. But how do you maintain your credibility in this situation? Because I think they're moving in a way that I'm like, it's going to be hard for you to maintain credibility within that locker room.
They might already be there. They really might. Yeah. I mean, you hear people talk, players talk about their level of respect for Watson, their belief in him. They're never going to come out publicly and say they don't, right? And another reminder is that like Deshaun Watson was a hero to a lot of these guys. His Clemson antics, beating Alabama, doing some heroic college ball, so coming into the NFL and thriving right away. That was 16, 17, 18. Like we're talking, and even 15. Most of these guys, think about 2015, Greg Newsome, these
Oh
cats,
man, you
these
gonna make
guys
me
are in
feel
high
old.
school. I know, man. I know. That's what's wild is that you forget that these guys were in high school watching him do that stuff.
Yeah.
He is a hero to them from what he used to be. So you're not going to hear many guys say, oh, he's not good. I don't know what the front office is doing. I don't know what the coaching staff is doing. This is ridiculous. That's not going to be publicly said. But what you can do is you can buy NFL Plus. You can go on there and watch the All 22, which tapes a little bit before and a little bit after the play. Watch the body
Mm.
language. Watch the sidelines. You can sense it. It's not hard. You can sense it. The actions of players on the field tell the story. So to the point of your first question, I don't know
Can
what
I
it takes to bench him. Go ahead.
can I
No, go
add
ahead.
to that point? I also think the lack of like visible frustration suggests to me that they have already gotten the point of past the point of being shocked that he's not that good anymore.
Yes,
Like
100%.
with when Russ got out there for the first time in Denver, like their wide receivers are furious because they expected more, right? This is at the point where it's just like, all right, well, he didn't see me. Like
Yep.
it just happens.
Yep.
Like they're just kind of accepted it. Like, because that's why I don't think you see these guys like being angry anymore. It's just like I think it's looked like this for a little while here, at least in camp behind closed doors.
It has. There were people saying it. I didn't get a chance to go to that many, but when I went, was it like some well-oiled machine? And I'm like, these guys are crazy for thinking this way, covering the team every day. No, I mean, I think they can get a little tagged in a negativeville, and I think that's where people start to be like, nah, no way, they're not this bad. It has
Mm-hmm.
been that bad, and yeah, like I said, to the point of your question at the beginning, I don't know what it takes to blame him. Maybe their hard line here was that it's going to go. We're going to ride this thing to the bye week no matter what, and then at the bye week we'll make a change if it needs to be made. I think that's probably what my top guess would be, Quincy, but I don't have an answer for it. So, I think people want to blame Jimmy Haslam because it makes them feel good about the scenario, right? If Jimmy's the one making them do it, like it's obvious here, right? Jimmy's the one who made them make the trade. Then they didn't really want to do this. No, that I am of the belief that a guy who told you a homeless person wanted them to draft Johnny Manziel, made the decision for him, would also tell you that I'm the one who drove the bus to make this trade. I believe in Deshaun. Like Jimmy's never been afraid to take credit. I don't think that's just going to change overnight. So I do believe this was born in football operations. The history of how they think about players with anything in their past tells you they're more than willing to dive into these situations for perceived value. And that's not to say that Kevin and Andrew are nefarious by any stretch, but giving them, like, absolving them of blame for the decision here is not the world we should be living in. And
Mm.
and to your point you made there too, I don't think it was an awful decision at the time. I understood where they were coming from. A lot of other teams were thinking the same way. And the problem that I think everybody evaluating the Deshaun Watson situation failed to understand properly was the impact this would have on the person, the impact of going from the league's darling to the league's pariah. Like that is a very significant impact for somebody who's used to everyone loving them and expects. And I'm not calling him entitled, but you're a darling. People love you. They're patting you on the back all the time. I can do what I want. There's no repercussion. He goes from that world to everybody in the NFL and sports world hates you. That's tough. That's a different world you live in, and it does have an impact on how you play the game. You also didn't think through the suspension length. You thought it was going to be 3 or 4 games. You failed to understand, again, the ramifications of public scrutiny that pushes it to a longer suspension. So you missed on that. You missed on the amount of time, which is a season and 3/4 of missed time, right? Which matters. And you also failed to evaluate how this quarterback could age. A guy who thrives in chaos, takes big hits, and is a quarterback who doesn't mentally process the game well enough to live from the pocket consistently and be out in front of blitzes and pressure packages by throwing the football. He was always going to take hits that he couldn't get away from because he cannot make those split-second decisions to save himself. And with that opens up a bigger risk factor. I am not saying the Browns were alone in whiffing on that, but they definitely did, and they have to own that. And from owning that comes a whole set of, should we allow these guys to make another choice at quarterback given what they did here? That's a different conversation, one in which I thought if you got to 7, 8, or 9 wins and Watson was just clearly the thing holding them back alone, you could say, all right, yeah, we'll give them another shot. We'll cut the guy. We'll give them another shot. But when you go maybe 2 and 15, that's dangerous territory. So my thing here is like, your question, the root of, again, your question, I think the bye week is where I'm starting to think if they don't make the move at the bye week, if the status quo remains over the next, 3 games, and they don't make a move after the bye week, then I'm like, something is off. They were either given assurances that they were keeping their jobs no matter what, and they're running this out to the end of the line, right? Or whatever. Like, they're not acting with urgency. The Jets are wrong on a lot of this stuff. Firing Salah, I don't think was the answer. They traded for Devontae Adams today. I don't really think that's the answer, but at least they're acting like guys who are trying to save their job and play with some urgency. Think through it with urgency. The Browns are acting like everything is ho-hum at 1-5. And, if we just keep keeping on, we just keep chopping the tree, we just take a swing, we keep every day, all the cliches they throw out does not indicate to me, Quincy, a team that is acting with urgency inside a title window to chase this. So it leaves us asking really tricky questions. Hey, did they get an assurance from the front office? I had somebody text me the other day, hey, maybe they're just running this out with Deshaun Watson to prove how bad he is, and then they can make this call, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, man, if they're wasting a season that is bluntly obvious to prove to Deshaun or whoever else that he's not good enough, they don't owe him that. They don't owe anybody anything. They owe the fans the understanding that we are doing the best thing we can for the team every single week to put a win in front of you. You don't owe that the way you think maybe you wanted to do. I get why they did it with Baker, because hey, we have to figure out if he is a franchise guy that we can invest in. You have already invested in Watson. The sunk cost fallacy is playing out in real time, right? Yeah. So this is a situation where we're asking a bunch of questions that we don't know the answer to, because all logic, not just me and you, Quincy, Mitchell Schwartz, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Rob Gronkowski, guys in the trenches of the league with connections who are on pregame and postgame shows, are saying this, and they're making a mockery of your franchise. So how are you justifying, and this question has not been properly answered at press conferences. No, I know you're starting him. How do you justify it to the fans? And I don't want to hear that you just say he thinks he gives us the best chance to win. How does he give you the best chance to win? So people understand it, because people are asking questions based on statistics, based on film clips they see, to understand how he gives you the best chance to win. So please explain that to us, because I don't understand it. And that's where you start to get into this separation, this juxtaposition between what they're saying in front of a microphone, he gives us the best chance to win, and what's happening in our eyeballs every Sunday. That doesn't match up, my friend. So teach me, tell me. And they're not giving us that. And that leaves us to ask these stupid questions that we have to ask because we don't understand it.
And I think you touched on one of my biggest criticisms of this regime has been, and I know this word kind of gets used in one way, right? When you say somebody's cynical, you're saying like they're a downer or something like that. But there's another definition of it where you're talking about someone who makes decisions and they disregard the kind of the fallout of those decisions, right? They're just worried about the impact, the immediate impact for their own wealth. And the Deshaun Watson trade, going for that trade, it was a cynical decision, even at the time. It's like, hey, we're going to get better at quarterback. Yeah, he has this whole thing following, that'll go away. It was a cynical decision to kind of go after that. And you've seen Andrew make some of these choices where, they're guys with personal background issues in where they draft. They go after them. And that's part of just drafting, but it's happened more than a few times here with the Cleveland Browns. Do you think this cynical way of going about it that the Browns front office has at times is something that needs to be corrected, or that will be corrected? Because I even seen them putting him out here now, you're kind of ignoring the environment out there. You're going to throw that dude out there in Cleveland Browns Stadium with the fan base that's fed up. A Bengals team that's 2-4 or at this point. So they're not going to be charged up to be there and support the Bengals. It's just going to be a lot of angry Browns fans drunk after the Muni lot at that stadium. And we know what this offense is going to look like. I mean, we can act like, it could turn around and all this. And maybe it does from one game because weird stuff happens when we play the Bengals at home under Kevin Stefanski. Yeah. But honestly, it's if you lose that game, the game that we all think we can win in the division, or you start to get blown out at some point because Joe Burrow just gets it together and starts throwing downfield, it's not the realm of possibility. This defense hasn't played great this year. So, and you're going to throw that guy that disliked in a game here. And Nick Chubb's going to be on the snap count. So it's not like Nick Chubb's going to be out there every play to shield you from the boos. And it's how do you continue to ignore what's going on outside of that building. And like, I don't think you should just like make decisions every day based on what the fans are feeling, right? But when it's at this point, when the most reasonable fans are saying you got to bench him, right? When pretty much everybody is saying, right? You mentioned it, Ryan Fitzpatrick, former NFL players, former Browns are saying it. How do you continue to ignore it and act like this is just going to be normal? You play these games in front of people. Right. And like, also another miscalculation. I don't know how you feel about this when it comes to every single front office regime that prepares a player to play in Cleveland. I don't know why we don't act like the fans are passionate in both ways. Like, yeah, we're going to root you. We're going to love you if you play well. But if you start stinking it up, this city will boo you. It's something they understand in the East Coast cities, right? Chicago, well, Chicago's not East Coast, but Chicago, you understand that. Philly, you understand that. Boston, you understand that. New York, you understand that. All of a sudden comes to Cleveland, oh my God, why am I getting booed here? Right? Like, how bad is it? And it's like, no, like we're just as angry as those cities. And it keeps catching people off guard here. But that's just a tangent there where I'm just tired of like this always catching people off guard. But it's like, what are we going to ever understand the environment in which these games get played in?
Well, they got to run away for 3 weeks. They got to get out of Cleveland. Think about the end of that week 3 Giants game. There were Jameis Winston chants happening, and it wasn't even that bad yet, right? It was bad, but they were in that game to the very end and tried to have a possession to go score. We just
hadn't seen the worst.
Think about, the Raiders game had a couple moments, but think about the 3 weeks since then and now coming home. And I think I say this again, in the cushy walls of Berea, you can tell them you're going to stick with the guy no matter what. When you get 60,000 drunk people in that stadium and putting together some of the loudest, reprehensible boos and disdain for a home player we may have ever seen. There is a chance in this game, the second he walks on the field, he is aggressively booed by his home crowd. Like, there is a very real chance that is the vibe of people. Like, again, I say if the media nationally is this aggressive toward the Browns about making a decision, think about how that gets to everybody. If you and I and local people are doing this, it reaches some people, right? They like to consume Browns content. They're seeking it out. They're turning on 92.3. They're turning on ESPN 850, whatever. Like, that reaches some people. But when ESPN, when all of the major outlets are saying the same thing, that reaches the masses.
When Fox does a sketch where it's like, what if Baker Mayfield were still the quarterback? You'd be 5-1. That's wild, crazy. That's crazy.
Full on sketch, full on acted out sketch.
Yeah, like a movie, a movie here to make you feel furious at the quarterback position. That's not gonna just be something that doesn't. People are. I've seen more Baker Mayfield comments this week than I had after they made the trade. Right, like it's just it. They're getting put to the fever pitch here, and like I can't blame them because look at what they have to watch every Sunday.
And the theory behind this is that maybe if you have 30% of the people really understand he's the root of the problem, maybe it's not that hostile in the stadium, right? Maybe the masses, because we forget that what's on social and listen to the radio and listen to our pods and watch our YouTube shows, that's not really the largest chunk of Browns fans, right? But it is like, this is so out there and it's so in the public and it's so in everyone's face that I bet 95% of Browns people feel this way. I genuinely think it's the most united cause of hatred around a player on an organization's team we may have ever seen. And it's not just because he's underperforming as a quarterback. It's because he is at the pinpoint of the culmination of a failed process that started with the Sashi Wars that has gotten us to this point where you got Miles in the peak of his career, you got Denzel in the peak of his career, Nick in the peak of their career. The window is supposed to be happening right this second. And at the pinpoint of that is this divisive trade that you brought in a person like Deshaun Watson. Your opinion on him one way or the other, but you can't call him not controversial. Can't say that in the slightest, even if you support him in those endeavors. That's a fact. And divided the fan base in the only way, and I think you and I said this before the season when we got together, the only way this ever solves itself is they win. And they win so much, it's at a Big Ben level of like, hey, we're winning, so whatever, right? It's not even it's not even close to there. So he is at he's at the precipice of everybody's Browns frustration. And when you get everybody to believe that this year is going to be the year, and it's the most disappointing, you would have people justifiably argue this is the most disappointed they've been in the last decade. They went 1-31. This is the most disappointed they've been versus expectations, reality. You get a hostile stadium. So my point is, inside the walls of Berea, it's fine to say the plan is the plan. When you get 60,000 people on top of you going after somebody in such an aggressive way that you're borderline worried about his safety, you're going to make some choices. If he is bad in this game, and I don't even think he's got to be the worst version of himself. He's just talking about kind of being himself. This is going to get ugly. Like, it's going to get so audibly ugly that it's going to make you kind of squirm in your seat. Like, there's a chance they're going to be forced to do it just by virtue of, like, when you get everybody on top of you screaming at you like that, that is an uncomfortable situation for everybody involved. And I think that the fan base is there. And I expect it to be ugly on Sunday. I really do. I have no other expectation. They're going to lose because that's the expectation I currently have for them until they prove otherwise. And then it's like, I expect the fan base to be so angry at him that it is the loudest set of boos that we have perhaps ever heard. That's where I'm at with it. And maybe the most hostile situation for a team, a player on a home team in their own stadium, perhaps ever. I can't even think of an equivalency here. I can't.
No, there's never been an equivalent here, because it's not just the field stuff, right? Like, it's everything else, the baggage that Browns fans have had to carry that's associated with Deshaun Watson. It's also getting kind of taken out there on him. And to bring to your points, we're like, this isn't just like a niche thing. We're like, oh, like the super hardcore online Browns fans think the Browns should do this, right? Kind of like how like the DTR wars were like last year or something like that. This is something like, my girlfriend doesn't watch football. She sent me a TikTok about how bad Deshaun Watson is. Like, she's like, is this the dude you cover? Yeah. Like, it's mainstream. Like, that game he had against Washington was so bad, it went mainstream. And that is a completely different level of play there. And I agree with you. Like, it's easy to have this plan before you get punched in the face. And what's going to happen Sunday is going to be a punch in the face of reality for this football team. That this fan base is not happy. And let's be honest about this, Jake. He has not responded well to hostile environments in a traditional setting. Like, his game against Pittsburgh, week 2, hostile environment, didn't really respond well to it. And then he's going to be in a hostile environment when he's not supposed to be in a hostile environment. And like, Pittsburgh just don't like you. These fans distaste you. They have a disdain for you and want you to go away. Like, that's different. And it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to get a lot of shots of a lot of signs in the crowd making the point clear. It's almost going to be like playing a football game in the middle of a protest, and you're the thing they're protesting.
Yep.
So like, if we've seen how Deshaun Watson reacts in these moments, he doesn't usually play well. So that's going to lead to more bad play. And it's like, how long you're just creating a cycle here. And I worry about, like, what are the other casualties about this, right? Do you lose players who you might have wanted to keep long-term because they experience this ugly and it changes how they view playing for this team? You know, like, why even subject anybody to this? This is my whole thing. It's like, you knew you were going to get to this point. You knew if you were 1-5 at this point that it can get ugly, or at least you should know. And now you're about to subject this team to either some of the largest fan apathy we've ever seen, and that's if you're lucky, or just straight up outrage.
And I lean to straight up outrage. Yeah. Like, I just think that the people are, from the moment that trade happened, there was a divided fan base about moving on from Baker Mayfield at that moment, which I understood. It's a divided fan base about it divided them even more when they brought in Deshaun Watson, which I understood. And they have gotten nothing good from him. They have gotten, in 3 years, think about the conversations that have happened. I cannot believe they gave that contract to that player right off the bat. So the decision and all that comes with the decision to bring him in, then it's the contract, then it's the suspension, then it's the additional suspension that is all over the news, right? More details come out. It gets darker and darker. Those things happen. Then you get him for 6 games and it's uneven. Then you get him the next year, talking about trying to support him because the 6 games weren't very good. So you're trying to build him up again. He's going to be that guy he used to be. Then he gets hurt. Then there's a controversy about getting hurt. Is his shoulder healthy? Is it not healthy? Is he lying? Who's lying? Why is he in the press bar? Or why is he up in the, wearing the Gucci shades and all that in LA? Now he's not with the team. Like there's a whole bunch of things there. Then it's like, okay, he comes back. Then he runs into a linebacker on his own fruition, gets hurt again. Like then it's shoulder gate all off season. Will he be, like, think about all of the conversations that have happened about him have been negative since the summer of 2022. We are approaching November of 2024 with like, this isn't a draft pick. This is a guy that they made one of the most divisive trades who, would put himself in one of the worst predicaments of all time for any athlete. Like what happened with him is one of the most controversial things for any pro athlete to be involved in, where he came out of it on the other side still playing. That's a fact. And then you add in all the baggage of he's just been worse. The suspensions have been added onto it. The shoulder's been hurt. He's been, what's going on in the media? Like it is. And now you continue to play him, like treat him with the respect of continuing to play him like he's some veteran legacy player. That's where people are at the boiling point. I'm hearing Browns fans say some horrible things here. And again, I expect it to be awful. And I think if it's awful into the second half, it could be so bad that they're throwing trash on the field. Like I'm all things are open to, is the way I'm phrasing it. Like nothing about what happens in that stadium Sunday would surprise me, other than them coming up and like lighting it up. Like that would be like, huh? That would be surprising. Like the offense just playing well and Watson playing out of his mind. That would be surprising. But
when the Bengals, they gave like Baker that one random good game in 2020.
They did do that. They did do that.
Right after the Odell cut.
Right. Yeah. It's not out of the world of possibility here, but boy, like, again, I would be like, oh my God, this is like in this stadium environment, all this sort of circling buzz around this game and where he is as a player. And he puts up a 300-yard performance and he hasn't put up over, I think he's put up over 200 in a while. Like that would be really surprising. Every other outcome from the world of like, hey, a fan jumped out of the stands and came out there and tackled him like that. That wouldn't surprise me. Like I genuinely, nothing would surprise me with how I think grim and the vibe around the franchise at 1-5 and the steadfast support of him as the quarterback of this team has put a lot of vitriol into people.
Yeah. Look, once this thing ends, I hope he understands that this is not a city he can ever come back to, because like people haven't even started to contextualize everything that you wasted putting 3 years into him. And that's if we just keep it at 3 years here. Jake, always fun to chat with you, man. Nice to talk ball with you. It's unfortunate because the team is so bad. We can't really talk ball. We have to kind of talk about what's going on around the ball. And that is just maybe part of me wanting him just benched, on top of all the obvious reasons. It's just, I just want to talk about football again.
Like, you and me both, man. I built a film-based website around the Cleveland Browns, hoping that we would have a lot of fun film breakdowns and things to point out in film rooms, unique things the team is doing. And none of it is like I told the seed money part of my website, like, man, we picked the worst time to do this. But the thing we know is that this is a community and people still show up and they want to know reasons and they want to talk foot. And that part of it is true. And that's a credit to Browns fans who have continued to surprise me, even though I shouldn't be surprised, because they take the punches, they take the beating, and they keep showing up in a pretty damn unique way. And I think that is a massive credit to the people who consume your content, who consume my content and the like, is that they are brand committed to this team. And as much as we fight it, much as we try to say we don't care, we do. And that's the sickness that is incurring. As again, the team probably tries to roll out in the next 2 weeks that they're going to try to take some state money to build a new stadium. It's great timing.
I ain't thought about that. But don't worry, Jake. Once February comes around, it's going to be a great time to be somebody who breaks down film.
Some college tape discussions finally, right?
Yeah, we're going to have some healthy conversations about the first round of this draft. So don't you worry.
Finally.
But everybody else, y'all have a great day. Jake, thank you for coming on. Everybody else have a great day. Have you a better night. Peace.